Tomorrow's jobs print should be a pretty important one because the market's in the midst of obviously fresh records from yesterday, a huge amount of growth and excitement around Nvidia, and potentially a little bit more, maybe even an everything rally. Been wondering if that was going to actually take place here over the last several weeks because the first step has already been completed with Nvidia blasting off. Now the question is if we can get the rest of the stuff to work. Light's been green on the risk radar, but basically everywhere else yellow because there's still a lot of unanswered questions, basically. We should be getting some answers tomorrow. We did get 3 jobs prints that were largely soft, but a good productivity and cost figure that showed a little bit of disinflation as well. There's also in the background a few things that remind us of frothy times from the past. GameStop's going crazy. Bitcoin's so close to making a big move. And we've even had a little taste of rotation and participation in some of the more cyclical and value areas. So if tomorrow's jobs number threads that needle perfectly, we might be able to just get that big everything rally. And that's kind of what I'm wondering. Do we have this highly concentrated market, or can we actually get a big animal spirits run up? This has been the question for like the past month, and even though we've been making highs, we haven't had that big, broad animal spirits type behavior. I think the dollar holds the answer and will be the biggest tell. If you look at the way the dollar's traded next to the 2-year, we've had some pretty substantial moves here. The way the 2-year yield was sharply rejected from where it was in April. We've done a pretty quick U-turn in the narrative around the Fed. In April, when yields were going up, there was talk that maybe they would have to hike again. But now as the data's come in a little soft, the question is, once again, in the context of other banks who have also cut around the world, will the Fed join in? And I think that's probably in the back of traders' minds here over the last 48 hours, seeing the Bank of Canada and the ECB, hoping maybe we get some of that secret sauce too. If the dollar manages to drop tomorrow, if the greenback slides while other central banks are cutting now and whose data have been weaker, I think that would tell us very clearly that there's a pretty substantial regime shift pulling forward cuts again. If the dollar's able to fall tomorrow on jobs, I think that tells you pretty much everything you need to know, because the dollar really shouldn't be dipping too much right now, given that the Fed's told us they're not going to cut and other central banks literally are. 2-year yield in bonds generally are a little bit more complicated than their read because you have to go to the yield curve for more information. So the dollar is what I'll be watching first. Then I'll be watching the yield curve 10s to 2s. My view on that is that you just don't want volatility in either direction. You don't want a big steepening if the number is great and forces the Fed to stay vigilant. And you don't want a big inversion and collapse in the yield curve if the number's terrible and says we're going to have to cut for bad reasons because the economy's hitting a wall. And the third thing that I'm watching, it's the coin. BTC. I have great respect for Bitcoin as an indicator of risk-taking appetite. And we're just so close. But once again, Bitcoin rejected today from trying to break out once more. So if we get the new high in BTC, it likely comes with the softer dollar. But the order of operations I'll be watching is the dollar first, because that thing shouldn't be dropping too far. And if it does, that probably means that cuts are indeed coming eventually and sooner than expected. Then look for bonds to determine the health of the print. You don't want dollar and yields going down for the wrong reasons. And then finally, Bitcoin to see if we can get the icing on the risk on cake.